Now video projects aren't always about video clips. Sometimes you have photos in your video projects as well. Just watch any documentary and you'll find tons of photos used in projects like that. And you may want to incorporate some of your photos into your projects as well. So let's take a look at adding photos. There are a few ways to add photos. One is you can switch to the photos and audio sidebar here. And this will show you different sources from other apps on your Mac. So you've got photos here and that will access your photos library in the Photos app. So you can browse through here and grab a photo. You could also use this to grab videos. You can see some of these, like this one here, is actually a video. So I could grab a video and drag that in from my Photos app. If I have all my videos stored in the Photos app, it might be an easy way to get it. Or I could simply grab a photo here and drag that in. Another way to get photos is to get them from the Finder, just like we did video clips at the beginning of this course. So here I've got a Finder window and I've got a bunch of video clips, but I also have some images. I could drag actually both of these images in here and I'll put one right after the other. I'm just going to grab one for now and drag it in. But if you wanted to say make a video slideshow, you could grab a bunch of different photos, drag them all in, and it would place them all in the timeline and give them about 6 seconds worth of time, which of course then you could adjust. So now I've got this photo in here. So the first thing we want to do with the photo is crop it. Photos typically aren't 16:9 like videos. Usually they're 4:3. So you're going to find, for instance here, a 4:3 photo that is placed inside of a 16:9 frame for the video so you can have black bars on the left and right. We can do several things to get rid of this. One is we can simply go to Properties here and Scale. And then with Transform tool turned on, we can now drag it around and position it where we want. I'm going to undo that and go back here and instead use the Crop tool. So we go to Crop. It's set to Trim, but if we switch to Cropping, it actually crops it 16:9. So you can see it's going to cut off the top and the bottom. I can reposition this a little bit and then I could use Done and then it will now fill the entire frame. So you're going to want to do that with photos. Otherwise you'll have those black bars. Now I can also make adjustments to photos in the same way that I did with videos. So I can go here to Colors, for instance, and I could do color corrections. So I can color correct or change or tint the same way I did with videos. I could also go to Effects and use the same effects here. So for instance if I wanted to use comic book here I could drag that on and you can see I can convert that image using Comic Basic or any other effect here. So the same video effects can apply to a still. It's just one frame so it's that much easier for Final Cut Pro to process. So you can create a simple slideshow just by putting a bunch of images and you could put transitions between them. So for instance I'm going to drag that other image in here after all and stick it there. So now I've got this image here. Let's crop this one as well. I'll crop. Done. And I could place a transition between the two of these. So instead of cutting from one to the other, I can have it do say a cross dissolve. And you can see it does that really nicely. Now it doesn't need to create the extra time when doing a transition from a still image to another still image. Why? Well, because it's a still image. So extending the still image can be done just kind of automatically. It doesn't matter if it's the beginning or the end of the still image. It looks the same all the time. So it doesn't bother you with that detail. So now you have a nice cross dissolve here, but you could do other things like for instance movements and doing a simple push looks good because it looks like you're doing a slideshow. I can actually go here and do direction left to right and now it's like sliding over to the next one. Now if you want to make the photo exist for a longer period of time in your video you can just simply drag the edge and now you can make it go as long as you want. Photos are handy for putting titles over. So before we had a title that was either just over black or over some video, but if you want to create a nice looking title, you could grab one of these like a center title here, stick it over a photo that you've got and then work on it to get it looking good here. So we can increase the size of both of these or however we want this. We can transform it and position it where we want. To create a nice kind of combo of a photo and a title. Which brings up generators. So in addition to photos, say if you wanted to have something behind a title and you just didn't happen to have a graphic handy, generators allow you to put a variety of different things already inside of Final Cut ready for you to use. For instance, let's go to solids. Solids are going to give us some colors here. So if we wanted to actually just have a color behind something, like let's choose custom, drop it here. And you can see the properties here allow us to set this as any color. So I can set it up as a color and now you can see how I could add a title over that color. We can also go to backgrounds and there's some animated things that you can add. There's a whole bunch of different ones. So let's for instance go to curtain here and I could add that and you can see I get this curtain effect. If I select it you can see I can do a custom color for it. Some of these have different properties. Like let's go to clouds. I can do clouds here and you can see how it'd be really cool to put a title over this. Let's do that. Let's put a title on top. Let's do basic 3D. Create a nice 3D looking title. So now we can see how this title appears here over top of these clouds. But if I select the clouds you can see there's parameters like how many clouds, adding or removing haze from it, even the random pattern that's used for the cloud. So I can kind of create my own custom thing. It's going to look different than everybody else's clouds that they add. So you can play around with all these different kinds of backgrounds here. And there are other things as well. You can just go to textures and you can see there's some images here. A small collection of them that you could actually place inside. Let's go to the metal texture. Place that back here. And we'll use replace. And you can see how that looks and I can change the type to something else. Let's go from gray to copper. Or maybe to pocketed squares. Natural has a whole bunch of things you can select as well. And you can see here a ton of different natural looking things. So I could just do grass. And there's a simple way to get some grass behind some text. And generators can be used for more than just background. So let's get rid of that. Let's go back to our video here. You could actually go to elements and create a shape. So I'm going to drag a shape here and put it on top. And there are shape properties like what type of shape. So I can do an arrow. And then I could rotate that arrow and stretch it and do different things with it. Let's go into here and scale it down. And position the arrow where I want. And now I've got an arrow that appears here in the video. And a little later on we'll look at how to move that arrow with the video as well. But I do want to show you a few final things with images. One is using the Ken Burns effect, which we looked at briefly before, but it really is meant for photos. Let's go to the cropping tools here and go to Ken Burns instead. So instead of there being a static photo, if you're doing kind of a documentary, you can have kind of like a moving photo here by positioning the start and end at different places. And then we can see when we play this video it does this kind of move like that, which is probably needs to be a little bit slower there. But the idea being that there's narration going on over the video. It's a more dramatic look to using a photo rather than it just being a still. The other thing you can do is you can use a photo as picture in picture. So I can basically put it up here as another layer here in the timeline. I select it. Now if I scale down you can see of course it reveals the video behind. So I can now go to transform and put it up in a corner or something like that so that it appears there. Now this is where the cropping for trim comes in handy because I can trim this to be some other size. So I can make this like a square thing here. And done. And then let's switch to transform. And now we have a square that you can put up in here. Now you can also fit it into a shape. The way you could do that is go to effects here. Then look for masks. And then grab a mask. And then choose a shape mask. I'll bring that in here. Drop it on there. And then you can see I've got the radius for the corners and the curvature. So I can make it pretty much just a straight oval. Now let's switch to transform here and I could enlarge this and you can see how I put this inside of a shape here. Now you can also create complex shapes. So I've reverted all the way back to the beginning here. and I'll shrink it later on. Right now I'm going to select the draw mask and drag it over. And as soon as I do that, you can see click to add a control point. So I can actually create these complex shapes here. And this isn't really a very good example, but you get the idea. And you can see how once I complete it now, it is the shape here that I can now customize. If I option click, you can see I can create curves in it as well. So now with this I could go to transform and shrink this down and put it somewhere. So you have the ability to create your own custom shapes to be able to put photos or videos. There's no reason this has to be a photo. It could be a video as well that you've cut a custom mask for, and then place that above the timeline here to appear over the video.